Well, folks, finally, after I don't know how many years, I think I started writing this follow up to my other book, Sempre Finding Home, um, before we even moved from Barbench to Sora. So it's been a long time in the finishing. The story was basically written about 2 or 3 years ago, but there's been lots of refining, and I think it's probably my best story. I like Sempre Finding Home, but I think the back and forth of the characters and their stories can be a bit confusing sometimes. And this one, it goes back a little bit and forth a little bit, but not as much. And I think it continues much more chronologically. So I shall introduce this book to you now. The story takes us from wartime London to the sexual liberation of the swinging 60s. From the company of a fashion magazine that disembarks in New York Harbour to an Indian reservation. It's in central Portugal that an eclectic mix of personalities find themselves together at the end of a year that brings a tumultuous period to a close. Yet along with their optimism and deepening friendships comes the certain knowledge that the future will bring different challenges. Ms. Martina Longfellow, a result of the love affair between a handsome American GI and a young Englishwoman, carries the weight of the past on her shoulders, and as a result is doing a resounding job at messing up her own personal life. Meanwhile, Jennifer and Nelson, the happily married couple whose troubled courtship we followed in Sempre Finding Home, are once more on the brink of a situation that could tear them apart. Now, the preface. After writing Sempre Finding Home, which was my third book, but first completely fictitious work, I was asked, but what happens next? Although my original idea had been to concentrate on developing the mystical element, which I believe had been successful in the original story, I was unsure how to construct a new tale around this theme. Yet I have a strong desire to believe in something more than our logical minds can perceive, leading me to reflect on how we cope with the loss of people we love. And it was Stephen who helped me develop the idea for that mystery in this story. I'm of the generation whose parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles lived through the horrors of 1939 to 1945. They were themselves part of a generation that we are losing with increasing speed. Their stories of the Second World War were told to children such as my siblings and myself, children who heard but did not really listen. And now, for me and many, it is too late to ask for their tales to be told to us once more. My mum was a child through the Blitz. Like many, she was evacuated, and like many people during those times, she found an escape going to the local flicks, where she watched films that took her away from the death and destruction around her. One of her favourite actresses was Deanna Durbin, and I remember watching Saturday and Sunday matinees with her on TV when I was a kid. My dad was a few years older than my mum and joined the RAF, where his carpentry skills were in demand to, among other things, patch up damaged aircraft. But as a boy, he had worked on the milk round, harnessing up the horses which pulled the carts in a very different world to the one we now live in. Between 1940 and 1945, he saw action in many different theatres of war, among them Italy, where I believe he may have developed his love for geraniums, something Stephen and I have done since living in Portugal. For Eileen's story and her family, I was greatly influenced by those half-listened to stories mentioned above. I had an Auntie Eileen who worked, if my memory serves me well, in the Faraday building, supporting a growing number of international telephone connections and local services. The character of Charlie was created in part from memories my father-in-law wrote down and gave to me shortly after we'd been introduced. His parents, his school days during the war, and his early working years are very close to what I have written for the small boy who is caught in an air raid near Liverpool Street Station and the young bookbinder Martina meets while modelling. His actual words are reproduced when, towards the end of this book, Martina reads his memories. Charlie's encounter with Eileen and his relationship with Martina are a complete fabrication, but I don't think he would mind. So, it is that with Sempre Believe, I hope that I have succeeded in writing an interesting story that, through a little research and half-remembered family history, helps the reader to have a better understanding of a miraculous generation. Yet I also hope that through the new characters' interactions with the original protagonists, this second book continues the story of people such as Jennifer, the young woman who fled a failing relationship to build a new life and find love in Portugal. Well, that's the outline of the story. I mention I write a fair bit about the Second World War, and I've done this by creating characters rather than it being a history book. But there are some things that I came across while writing and doing a little research, and this bit I thought was very interesting. In reference to the Second World War, it's easy to believe that in the build-up to the conflict, Nazi Germany bore little similarities with other countries. But in truth, the belief of a master race stemmed from eugenics, a scientifically erroneous and immoral theory of racial improvement and planned breeding. The idea gained popularity during the 20th century, when eugenicists worldwide believed that they could perfect human beings and eliminate so-called social ills such as unpopular behaviour through genetics and heredity. The movement was popular in many countries, including Britain, and Mary Stopes, the name now known by many and often heralded for her advocacy of giving women control over how many children they had, was also a fierce advocate of eugenics. She called for the hopelessly rotten and racially diseased to be sterilised and was vehemently opposed to interracial marriage. While her more famous publications were relatively benign, the bulk of her writing reveals a woman preoccupied with the unfit, a person who was convinced that the powers of birth control could improve the biological quality of Britain's population by preventing the lower classes from overrunning the more socially fit upper ones. And let's not forget the USA. As Jews were being persecuted throughout Europe, black people too were being treated as second-class citizens in their own country, not allowed in the same establishments as white folk. What's more, eugenics made its first official appearance in American history through marriage laws. In 1896, Connecticut made it illegal for people with epilepsy who were feeble-minded to marry. And in 1903, the American Breeders' Association was created to study eugenics. Shockingly, from 1909 to 1979, around 20,000 sterilizations occurred in California state mental institutions under the guise of protecting society from the offspring of people with mental illness. Many other sterilizations were performed on minorities, and 33 states would eventually allow involuntary sterilization in whoever lawmakers deemed unworthy to protect or unworthy to procreate. I'm leaving it there. But yes, please give my book, Sempre Believe, a chance. It's a good story. And as with Sempre Finding Home, despite the ordeals the characters have, it has a happy ending.